Take off to some great Dungeons and Dragons. Take off! It's a beauty way to play. Take off! It's time for disorganized play. That was extraordinarily short. Even Dom was like, that's it? I don't want to click. No, don't click. Hey, hi everyone. I am Tom Lommel. I'm back from the Great White North, the beautiful wilds of Alberta, as it were. I made a little trip to Calgary, made a little trip to Edmonton, saw some friends get married. It was, all in all, a beautiful trip. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Banff, and specifically to go to Lake Louise, I highly recommend it. There's nothing more inspiring than standing 2 miles away from a glacier and soaking in the majesty of nature. And I don't say that like sarcastically, like it really was like, oh yeah, it really is difficult to climb a mountain. I can understand how, you know, that would take a lot more time. Like it's always a great inspiration for me to get out of the old routine of Los Angeles and go see something amazing. Thank you, Modern Chow, for the bits. Much appreciated. Glad to have everyone here. If you are new, I'm Tom Lommel. I am your Dungeon Master on Wednesday nights. I am your advisor on Tuesday afternoons, where I talk about what's coming up in the game, what issues I see ahead, what things I'm trying to plan for, what things maybe caught me by surprise last week, and along the way dispense my experience and wisdom as a DM to help shepherd you through your own game, whether you're a player or specifically as a DM. So welcome to the show. Tomorrow night we will be running another installment of When a Star Falls. We've got 5 episodes left, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. Hey, what are we going to talk about today? You'll notice that this chair is empty. Jay Africa, DM extraordinaire, the gracious man who filled in for me last week while I was on vacation. He will be here. We're going to do a couple things. So at the top of the show here right now, we're going to talk about these epic new D20 coins that are currently kickstarting through campaign coins on Kickstarter. So we're going to talk about those a little bit. Then we are going to talk about what happened last week in terms of, last week I spoke in very vague generalities about how I was putting this session together and what I was passing on to Jay. So now that we've actually run the game, Jay's actually run the game, I thought it would be worthwhile to sit down and hear his perspective on how it worked, how it didn't work, what he used, why he chose to use what he used, etc. So we're going to have a little recap, do a little DM roundtable from last week. I'm going to try and let Jay talk more than I talk. I'm somewhat embarrassed by the amount that I forced Jay to just sit and, I mean, Dom has to sit and nod, but that's because I'm smarter than Dom. I feel bad for Jay because Jay's clearly smarter than I am. So I'm going to try and let Jay talk about how the session went last week and how he prepped it and how the materials I got in his hands were useful or not useful to him. And then finally, we're going to talk, I've got a terrain piece for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, the party is entering the Darrow Lair. And so I, on the spur of the moment, I should not have, but I put together a special terrain piece for that. And I'm going to share that with you today because I finished it this morning instead of spending 3 hours doing the laundry and cleaning the house like I should have. Remember, if I have one great foible as a DM, it's using my prep time to make a map and not actually writing up any stats or anything like that. So we're going to indulge that. What do they say? It's my hamartia. So there. Hamartia. It's a Greek word. Sort of like your fatal flaw. All right, so let's talk about, let's shift over to the tabletop cam. Now, Mark Morrison from Campaign Coins swung through and did he ran a wonderful game of Call of Cthulhu for us, a little one-off. While he was here in town, he brought along some production samples of their new Epic D20 coins. I talked about them a little bit last week. Was it last week? No, it was 2 weeks ago. I talked to them a little bit about them a little bit 2 weeks ago as an upcoming Kickstarter. They've officially launched now, and you know, I'm a big fan of campaign coins in general, and we use these, not those. we use their D20 tokens, their standard D20 tokens, all the time on the stream. We use them for rerolls, right? Well, here we actually have a good side-by-side of one of these new epic D20 coins. And these are really more, I would say, like a poker chip size. Like the tokens, the regular D20 tokens, these are the copper version. They're nice. I love them. And the design is amazing. So I'm really happy with those to begin with. But the next size up, oh, here's a poker chip. We actually have a poker chip. So there you go. There's your standard poker chip. And that's almost exactly the same size as a standard poker chip. So they're bigger, as I clumsily attempted to demonstrate. They're also thicker. So I don't know how well that side by side is showing. Let's see if we can catch some light there. But that's the they're about, I would say, 1.5 times as thick. I believe Mark said the design had been tweaked a little bit since they blew it up. And in fact, so if you look at them side by side, I might as well just lean in here since you're not looking at me, thank God. If we look at them side by side, so this has a blank border on the edge of it, and this has this, I don't know what pattern, this wave pattern around the edge of it. There's more fill in behind the numbers on like the ancillary numbers, the 2, the 10, the 3. There's more fill in there. So it just has a little bit more razzle dazzle, right? And the curls here have a little bit more detail in them too. So, side by side, they didn't just take this design and just blow it up straight up and have a bunch more made. They actually did alter and take advantage of the fact that there are, they're working at a different scale, so they can add some more detail and really refine what's on offer here. I also wanted to, if you stack them up, it's a really, I'm one of those tactile people who just loves like touching and holding things. So that's me. Yes, the original design is still available, right? You can buy these. I believe you'll be able to add them on to in backer kit or whatever once you make your pledge. I'm sure that's true. I also wanted to give you just a reference here. Here's the Devon Rue Compass Rose, which is also a really nice, solid, hefty piece of work, and looks wonderful on your game table. So that's just sort of a little side-by-side comparison of those particular items. All of those, I'm sure you can put in backer kit and get them all shipped together. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to speak out of turn. Campaign Coins is here in the chat, so they can confirm or deny that. You can also just order them off of their site, right? These are being Kickstarted right now. They're funded, so that's good. It just launched yesterday, so we're fresh off the train here, the crowdfunding train, and pushing towards stretch goals. They're going to do different materials and whatnot, right? So just like these came in gold and like a silver, and then this copper color. I really love the copper color. I also love this gold, especially for the larger size. I think these make two really nice kind of complementary game aids on your table. Jay Africa has joined us. Jay, if you were to have a stack of these at your D&D table, how do you think you would use them?
Easily as inspiration.
Yeah.
So yeah, hand one of these out for an inspiration token. If you're running a homebrew game with your own homebrew rules, I mean, you could use these as like luck points.
Right.
As a player, you could use these. If you have the lucky feat or something like that, you could have 3 of these. You can toss them in.
Yep.
To keep track of that. Spell slots, you can use them to track spell slots.
I love the idea that you could hack in a rule where it's a luck point where you toss it because it's got a 1 and a 20 side.
Yeah.
And if it comes up 1, it's bad luck, and if it comes up 20, it's good luck.
Yeah, just make sure you have your battle mat on the table and you're not, flipping that on a glass or a wood table because these things will cause a nick.
That was not me like trying to make a loud noise with the coin.
Yeah,
that's them bouncing on a felt table.
It's the same thing with any kind of like metal dice that you might have, But yeah, I like the idea of it being luck points. Again, they make really fancy spell slot counters.
Mm-hmm.
You can cash them in.
Yep.
If you have run combat on the grid, you can also use it as like a marker of some sort, like maybe a table or if you have one of those, what do you call them? The orreries. If you have an orrery or something those things that track the movement of planets and stuff, you can have an assortment of these things, kind of like walking, you can have this as the center and they kind of orbit around. These just make fun little tiles, or if you don't use miniatures enough to have a stack of, minis or whatever you need. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. You've got one inch scale right there.
In the chat, I don't know if you rewatched, but I was like, "Here come the Godzillas."
Yep. So
Fire Red Lily, thank you so much for subbing up 9 months. Very good.
Wow,
your resubscription entitles you to bestow a reroll. Speaking of rerolls, to either myself or one of our players in any of our games. I think in our game, we often have a thing where we have the DM's Lament that's unlocked. You saw that last week.
Yeah.
I think these are great for tracking something that's not like specifically inspiration, right? So if you want to give somebody, inspiration, you have to use ahead of time. If you wanted to give somebody a reroll, this would be terrific. Who's playing tonight, Dom? Dom's going to fill that information in. I don't know off the top of my head. It's Stephen Pope's game, The Garden of Good and Evil, his Changeling game. So you can tune in to that tonight at 8 o'clock. So I think these would be great for, okay, you've got a DM's Lament point that you haven't spent yet. Here you go. Or if you wanted to add rerolls to your table instead of inspiration, you could use these for that.
One other thing that I didn't think of originally, concentration.
Yeah.
A DM can go, okay, you're concentrating on a spell. There you go.
Great.
Keep that in front of you.
Yep.
And when you're done concentrating or your concentration is broken, boom, cash it in. Now, as a DM, you can look to see who's got it and who doesn't.
Yep. Especially if you're running like at a con game at a table. Like,
sure, yeah.
I'll tell you though, like you got to count at the end of the day because it's very tempting for these to walk away. They're really beautiful pieces to put on your game table.
And sometimes people don't really think about it. They'll just scoop up the minis and scoop up whatever's
intentional or not.
Yeah, precisely.
It's certainly what I'm saying by that is if I had poker chips and I lost a poker chip, who cares?
No big whoop,
right? Whatever, big deal. Yeah. Right. But these are just a nice premium kind of game aid to have on your table and. Once again, Campaign Coins has done a terrific job producing these. These are the production samples. I assume Mark would not have given them to me if they didn't accurately represent what was going to come. But I will say, having backed their previous Kickstarters, like I just backed they did Metal Meeples, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
For Carcassonne or whatever board games you want to play. And they're very conscientious. Like these didn't turn out properly. We're not happy with the final product versus what the sample was sent, so we had them rerun them.
Right.
Like Mark and Andre are very discerning about making sure that you get the quality that you pledged for. So go back them. They're friends of the show. I'm big fans of theirs, and that's obvious, right? So the only pay I'm getting from them is I got a sneak peek at the Epic D20 coins. So that's that. 100% final samples, done deal. Very good.
Yeah, they're great finishes.
Yeah.
They look beautiful.
Head on over to Kickstarter. Make a pledge, pick something you like, and let's push towards some of those good, juicy stretch goals that are just awaiting out there. I will say too that Campaign Coins does a great job of fulfilling their Kickstarters. I don't feel like it's like a year and a half later, and you're like, what? It's not one of those where you got to scroll back and check on it.
Right.
It's also not one of those. I'm going to do a little Kickstarter rant here. It's not one of those where you get like 500 like updates. Like I'm on one of them where it's like it was a game and they had to do custom illustrations for the game, and so like every week I get an update that's like, hey, we're having a draw along. Come join us on Twitch or whatever.
Sure,
and I'm like,
yeah.
if it's not a PDF, an update about shipping, or notification that everything's like about to drop, I'm gonna trust you.
Yeah,
I'm mostly gonna trust you.
Yeah. Like the engagement will, can only go so far.
They do a good job of running their chaos, is what I'm getting at. Not everyone does. So there. That's the preview. That's the snapshot. I'm gonna try and bring these in tomorrow night so that we can use them in our game tomorrow evening as well. Technically, these belong to my wife.
Oh,
I'm borrowing them until the Kickstarter fulfills, and then they will get returned.
Sure.
So, very good, very good. So, let's talk a little bit now. Jay had an appointment, so he's running a little bit behind. It's all good. I said in the opening of the show, though, that I wanted to, number one, try and let you talk more than I talked. You hear this guy?
No,
no. But so last week, in Disorganized Play, I talked about, very vaguely about, okay, I'm trying to prep this for Jay in a way that is gives him an understanding of where the party is coming from. And also gives him some options to include as much material as he needs to fill the time without overloading him with too much material that he gets buried in prepping it. So those were my two goals, and also to give you the information that allowed you to make a clear bridge from my previous session to now my session coming up tomorrow night. Keep the continuity of the adventure arc. And so I want you to talk about, like, okay, here's what I got, here's what I thought, here's how I approached it, here's how it worked, here's what didn't work. What was last week? What was prepping last week like for you, and what was the game like?
Prepping last week was quick and easy. I mean, first of all, I had... Well,
you are allowed to say Tom did a crappy job.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, first of all, I watched the Disorganized play for the week prior.
Okay.
And then I watched the session of the week prior that I was going to run my game. That's
a big help that I don't always do.
Yeah, yeah. No, exactly. But I mean...
Smart.
I've pinch hit for I've pinch hit as a DM several times in the past. You don't always get that kind of help walking into a situation.
Well, and even that week that I got sick, it was kind of like, here's some notes and just do what you want. And I felt bad for you because the players started asking kind of like big, kind of like looming campaign questions that you were not prepared, that I didn't prepare you to answer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I mean, the beauty of that is that big campaign questions like that probably wouldn't even have gotten answered. Like,
right.
If you had been running that session, you probably, I mean, there would have been that air of mystery that you would have maintained anyway.
BSB Care asks a good question here. He says, do you still use Plot Radar, and would it be useful to keep it around for a guest GM, like if I got sick? We haven't been using Plot Radar this second half. I thought about actually like bringing Plot Radar in today. I don't think it would be useful for somebody like Jay to like hand them to it, because the notes are so shorthanded. So the way the Plot Radar works is I have a list of like story elements that are in play.
Right.
But I'll have ones that like, this is something that's going to happen 3 sessions from now. It's just sort of looming out there. So I know that if there's a way that I can kind of like build a path or foreshadow that stuff in this session, like I know kind of like how far away I have to, how immediate I have to reveal that information. And then I'll backtrack from like basically like 3 or 4 sessions out into what's coming up in this next session, storylines, plot elements that need to be resolved, need to be taken care of, or I anticipate they're going to be addressed through play. So for instance, like the Darrow Lair, session has been coming for a long time, so that would be way out in the Plot Radar. But as we get closer to it, then I would move it up on my Plot Radar so that if I were to do Plot Radar today, I'd say next session is the Darrow Lair. We're going to try and answer these 3 issues.
Right.
And sometimes what it allows you to do is when you have multiple things that are open, okay, we've got what's the fate of the druid, what's going on with the lumbering in the woods, I can try and figure out a way to like combine several elements and address them. Like, is there a way that I can? I've got so many loose ends. Is there a way I can tie up some of them?
Yeah. Is there like an NPC or like a device, like an object that can sort of tie and give that information out?
But the notes that I have are literally just like little sticky notes that say Darrow Lair, lumbering, lumber work, the Iron Keep, Warwent. Like, it's useful for me because I shorthand them so much. I don't know if it would be useful for Jay to get something like that and try and make sense of it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm breaking my rule of not talking too much. You guys don't ask me questions about the way that I prep or don't prep.
No worries. All ties in. I'm in no hurry. So, that's interesting.
So you watched DisOrganized play, and you watched the previous session.
Yeah. The other thing I did was I picked up a copy of UK4 When a Star Falls.
Okay.
So I got a little more background on that. I love the UK series. They did first one was Beyond the Crystal Cave, and then
I think Land Beyond the Magic Mirror.
Yes.
Is one of them.
Yeah. I think that's huge.
I don't know why because those I think those are both like Gary Gygax kind of modules where it's like let's just adapt Alice in Wonderland. But the classic ones that I think of there's what's the other one? Was Secret of Saltmarsh? Isn't that a UK module?
I can't remember what that one is.
Maybe that's just
I don't know if that was UK.
One.
Yeah.
But the Sentinel and the Gauntlet are like is like a 2-part adventure.
Sure. Right.
That those are when I think of UK modules. Those are the 3 that I think of. As I think of When a Star Falls, the Sentinel, and the Gauntlet.
Yeah. No, the writing is just so distinct for them,
and the art style.
And all that stuff. Exactly. I love those modules.
Yeah. So you picked up the PDF.
Yeah, exactly. Picked that from what used to be D&D Classics, now the DM's Guild. It's pretty available. And I didn't have a chance to give the whole thing a read, but I did sort of look through it and flip through it, and so I knew about the Darrow, and I knew about some of the other elements that were incorporated into this particular session. Mm-hmm. So I was ready that way.
Then you also saw kind of how far afield I strayed.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. I mean, the whole module is 30 pages long.
Well, and a lot of it is kind of filler too.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a lot of artwork and a lot of maps and stuff like that. And so it's totally understandable that the DM would have to take these elements and make a good storyline based on who their players are. That's sort of part of what the DM's job is, and I think that's sort of a refinement or a lost art that these shorter modules had that you don't necessarily see with these bigger, thicker, 200-page adventures that are released nowadays, which is great. Those are wonderful as well. But it's just a different way of thinking.
I feel like they kind of did it with Dragon Heist, right? Like there's a storyline that is probably 20 pages.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Maybe a little bit more. Like there's the initial stuff that kind of gets you to level 3, and then there's the Dragon Heist part of it, which if you pared it down, I think is probably 20 pages of material. Yeah. Except it's 80 pages of material because there's 4 different ways through it.
Right. Yeah. They expand on it quite a bit, which is great. It's when you're running short on time and you have an adventure that you need to run, it's great to be able to have that to kind of lean on. You don't necessarily have that with these adventures. Yeah. But what Tom talked about in DisOrganized play last week was, giving lore, but not oversaturating. Not necessarily creating stuff that, or not necessarily giving me too much that I might not necessarily use. And he did a great job with that. So what he had given me was essentially, what was it? I think it was 4 pages of material. So these 4 pages right here, I wrote notes for myself in it as well. And I mean, looking at the notes I wrote, one of them was about the guest player that we had that week, Christina.
Right.
She was wonderful. She was a lot of fun to play with. Some of it
I felt a little bad for her because it was very clear that she was going to be a strong, role play, social interaction type of player at the table. And she got to do a bunch of that, but I didn't put enough challenges in to the kind of the mix or the menu of options to really give her a great moment for everybody to kind of shine.
Oh, sure.
Way. She got opportunities to shine.
Yeah.
I think it would have benefited from some sort of social negotiation moment.
Well, and there was some things in the notes that I looked at, and I was like, okay, so yeah, this is how I'm going to run those. And as soon as I got here, out the window.
Yeah.
So, for example, the interaction with with Torin, the Awakened Ape, was supposed to be a lot more challenging, a lot harsher, and I kind of just ended up making him a little bit more of a welcoming character, just sort of how it ended up flowing with him interacting with everybody else in the group. And I thought that everybody in general enjoyed that as well. So you know what, we'll go with that, and that's sort of where he's at.
I think that's always like a key DM skill, is that you are given a menu list of obstacles to challenge the party with.
Sure.
And it's that whole reading the table in real time of like, am I going to make a big deal out of this, or are we going to move on to something else because the party's focus is someplace else? And that's where I saw that. You know, Torin is supposed to be kind of like, in my notes, you have to kind of win him over because they were given that bow, like, oh, this will win him over. And I'm like, okay, well, let's put that key in that lock and turn. But it didn't, you know, they were someplace else. Their attention was elsewhere when we got to that scene.
Yeah. And, you know, actually the bow didn't even, I mean, Tom had a really cool moment in here of something happening to that bow once it got, you know, presented to Torin. It didn't happen, but I suppose what we have now is that we have Alton having a green treader bow that in itself can be a seed that comes to fruition elsewhere.
That's exactly something that I would put on plot radar. Is like, he's got like we've now invested meaning into this bow for whatever reason.
Right.
Like, it's just turned into that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's not something that I planned. And the great thing about plot radar is you would just make a new sticky note that goes, Alton's bow. What is it?
Yeah.
What's going on? And turn it into something that the party has focus for.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing with Strumthrum's ribbon.
Yeah.
You know, that ribbon that got tied around her, that if she needed help, you just break it and something happens.
Will she forget it or not? That's my thing about like I hand out little kind of like, I hate to say it, but they're kind of like those, you know, lost mystery box J.J. Abrams kind of mystery box items where it's like, when you need it, just use this.
Yeah.
And then the players forget about it, and which is fine. Like
but at the same
fine. I enjoy having that.
Yeah, but at the same time too, the players are really good at looking at their notes and remembering, oh, I've got this. Like, for example, that whole thing with Strum and the fish.
Yeah.
You know, that she ended up sharing with Regardless, right? You know, these I mean, I think it's great to throw stuff out and give players the opportunity to make that lore their own, you know, to really figure that out. And if they forget about it, then you get to bite them in the butt later on, further in the campaign.
It's one of those things. That's the great thing about it is it's just floating out there as an ambiguous story element. Yeah. And if you want to turn it into some sort of thing where it's like a curse or whatnot, you can do that, and the players will go, oh, fair, that's right, we do have that thing. Yeah. Or if it just falls by the wayside because their attention goes elsewhere, that's all right too.
Sure, yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was the same thing with that pipe that Alton received. You know, I mean, I didn't want to, because of the time and what I was hoping to accomplish, I didn't necessarily want to make too big a thing out of it, but at the same time, I just planted that seed about how, you know, it makes the tobacco taste really good, and all of a sudden you feel your senses a little bit more acutely, you know.
Just a quick aside. So Tabletop Tales asked for a little bit more info about Plot Radar. The Tabletop Bellhop. So what Plot Radar is if you do a Google search for like Kanban boards, like a Kanban board, it's a type of story element organization, right? Or project organization, like a Kanban methodology basically puts things into silos, right? And I came up with this completely independently, but there's a lot of overlap over how they work, right? And so what it is I have a list of all of my plot elements, what's going to be addressed in the immediate next session, what's going to be coming up in the session after that, that's probably one session out, and then I have kind of a third column for things that are like on the distant horizon. I also have a column for things that are now dormant, like elements that have been addressed or wrapped up that are now like resolved in the player's minds, right? And that goes in a dormant column, so I can kind of track those. I also have two columns, one for things that are dangling and one for things that are, I don't remember what I call it. oh, I'm sorry. This is retired. The column is retired over here for stuff that's been wrapped up. I put that in a retired column. Dormant over here. So dangling is stuff that the players know about that I have not figured out how I'm going to fit into the story, but it's something that they're aware of. And dormant is stuff that I have introduced into the game that they have forgotten about. So, for instance, if they forget about the charm around Vanna's wrist, I would take that element from here and I'd put it over in the dormant column. And the stuff that's dormant, I can decide to ignore if I want to, because the players don't have any awareness of it. They're not focused on it. The stuff that's in the dangling column is stuff that it does sound a lot like Trello. A Trello board is also a good example. The important thing is how you categorize this information, because if you think of it as basically like, I call it plot radar because it's pinging how close all of these story elements are to your players encountering them. And so what it does is it helps you focus on where I need to do some prep work, right? So if I have something that's distant, that's way out there. So for instance, the resolution of the Black Cube and delivering the books of prophecy to Shalfie Talfie and the Master's Apprentice. I know that those are several sessions off. I just put them out there so that I know, okay, at some point I'm going to get to that. Yeah. But the stuff with the Derolaire, it's happening this session. I need to focus my prep work on that. So now I'm not sitting there going, oh, well, what storylines are happening?
Sure, yeah.
And it allows me to prioritize what I want, the stuff that I want to think about in a way that's related to what I think they're investigating. So especially for me as an improv DM, I tend to like introduce a lot of these mystery box type of elements. Or players like, well, I'll introduce an NPC that I didn't plan on, and the players will get a hook on it, and then now all of a sudden I got to put them on my board, so it allows things to pop up and pop off.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting how so much of the Iron Keep Chronicles that continued off the first session that I DM'd ended up being focused on the Green Treaders inducting the party into their clan.
Right.
And, interacting with them. I wasn't really sure where you were going to go with that.
Neither was I. Because
sure,
like I said, that was like totally spontaneous.
Yeah. And I thought that was really, at the end, like Strum and Zariestra had this little relationship that it'll hopefully pay off in dividends later on. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really cool.
It could be a little bit like clocks in Played by the Apocalypse. The other thing that I want to point out, as B.S. Bucher has mentioned, I call these things Schrodinger's clues. So what that means is I will introduce something that is engaging, but doesn't have any specific meaning or stats attached to it. Like in that indoctrination scene, where I came up with that thing. The ribbon. So I call that Schrodinger's clues. And what that means is we know a little bit about what it is. We know that she's got a ribbon, and we know that if she cuts it when she's in trouble, something's going to happen. But we don't know, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Whatever it is. And so I will introduce elements that have a little bit of detail, and then as the players inspect them or try and discover more information about them, there'll come a point where I definitively have to make a decision of, okay, the bow is good, or the bow is a magic item.
Right.
The bow is an ancient magic item. The bow is an artifact. The bow has an intelligence that can be awakened.
Right.
Like, I don't have to decide any of those things when I first introduce the bow. But as the players start interrogating that detail, it's like opening Schrodinger's box. You have to decide, is the cat or alive or dead? And you have to commit to it. Yeah. Once it's committed to, then I generally can kind of move it into my retired column of that story element, which was dangling out there, which we don't know what the resolution is now resolved. So that's a quick insight into my jackass improv DMing style of creating stuff on the fly and then using this kind of Kanban organizational technique to wrangle those cats.
Sure. And mind you, because I'm a whole other sort of factor in this thing. There are elements that, when you look at a piece of fiction, there's, what is it called? It's the principle of conservation of detail, or something like that. Where
I want to hear this.
Yeah, no. The idea is that in a short piece of fiction, like for example, an hour and a half movie, the details that you put in there need to pay off later on.
Right.
So you don't necessarily put anything extraneous. You put stuff that will develop the story, the fiction. But you don't put much more than that, and it pays off later. And if it doesn't, it's kind of a wasted effort, right? So because this is a longer ongoing thing, we're not necessarily limited to that.
Yes.
But at the same time, you can sort of follow that principle and think, okay, this little thing that I injected earlier on, they might think it's not important, but it kind of comes in later on. That cursed library, there's a whole other thing there that if they did not deal with, because they did not go in to deal with,
right? They didn't enter it.
They didn't enter it, and they didn't deal with everything that was in there. There's stuff that I can pull out that I have plans that in my mind are going to terrorize the green trouters in a much, much worse way later.
Oh, okay.
So
I had no idea
whether it happens or not. Whether that's for this story or not, or whether that ever comes to fruition or not in this campaign or in future campaigns that tie in. Who knows? But it's something that I've got in my head, and it's something that I can plumb later on.
I think the advantage to RPGs versus a movie is that you can take a principle like conservation of detail and kind of like flip it on its head, where not everything is meaningful.
Yes.
When I watch a movie and they kind of like linger on a shot, because of the principle of conservation of detail, the wheels start turning like, okay, what is? Oh, wait a minute, what does that mean? What's that guy up to? Da 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 da.
Yep.
Whereas in an RPG, you can't count on the player's attention lingering on that detail, or even if it does, like them retaining it for more than like 2 or 3 sessions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then there's the opposite of that, where you throw in a tiny little detail that's meant to be just throwaway thing, and they just linger on that. The barmaid, pours you a drink. Okay, let's flirt with the barmaid for an hour. And all of a sudden you have to make the barmaid a whole other thing. That
I think BSB Care puts it fairly succinctly. Is that conservation of detail is Chekhov's gun, where if you put a gun in the first act, it has to go off by the third.
Yes. Yeah.
I always feel like Chekhov's gun is a little more dramatic than maybe just conservation of detail. Like not everything has to be a gun going on. I think of Chekhov's gun as like, when that gun goes off, that's a major plot altering event. Whereas you can introduce details that
what is it? Well, I mean, I can't think of the example right now, but if it comes to me, I'll get you. It's they're like, it could be something like a color or a prop that somebody sets in a scene that later pays off in some sort of minor way. It doesn't have to be super significant, but you realize it.
Oh, okay, that was important.
That tells you a little bit of, that revealed something about the character that you may not have noticed to be.
Sometimes it just catches your notice that, there's something going on here more than what's on its face going on in the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
And Tom, definitely, the thing is, I mean, you definitely put some of that stuff in here.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to make sure that you had an idea of what information was essential that gets us from the previous session to this week's session, so that you could bridge that gap, but also feel like you had some freedom to play with things and make the session your own.
Yeah, absolutely, and I definitely felt that. What I got. So basically, the real gist of the session itself, 1 page, fantastic. Just story hooks, the background, sort of where things were coming from, and then a series of bullet points, some of which were essential, some of which were not, and that was great. That was really easy for me to prepare. I was able to read this in like a couple of minutes and know how I was going to run, where things needed to go from point A to point B. The next 3 pages were about the challenges. There we go. And that's the order of the page. And so the thrust.
Tom screwed up by not putting page numbers in his DM's prep.
No big whoop though. I mean, the thrust of this session was the fetch quests, right, for the ingredients, right?
Yeah.
And as Tom and I, as Tom and I were like talking about this, as you and I were talking about this, we thought, okay, there's so many ingredients that they're gonna have to get. They'll probably get one.
Yeah.
And so, what my challenge was if they just get that one, how am I gonna make it so that we can move forward?
Right.
And that's why I added that bit about Torrens saying, okay, we have most of these ingredients. Right. There are some that we don't know if we have enough of it. So I had that out. I had that out of, okay, you only got one. Guess what? I scrounged through. Boom. It turns out we have just enough. I also had the out of, I gave myself the out of, if they didn't get all that, you could still do the ritual, but it might not turn out the way it needed to.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
There might have been some sort of side effect in some sort of way.
The one that or something that occurred to me that I didn't put in the notes, which maybe I should have, is like some of the ingredients are so common that they could be collected on their way to going and get this really unusual thing, or like with a couple simple survival checks, they could gather this as they went.
Yeah, or find like a substitute or something like that. Yeah. In the end, I received challenges for 4 of those ingredients. I think was it 3? No, 3 of those ingredients plus something that would have developed the world outside the fetch quest a little further. In the end, I put it in front of the party, as to which ingredient they wanted to go after first. And because of Lowstorm's condition, they were really on task, actually. Yeah. It's funny because BSB Care asks how far off the rails did the party go? Not off the rails at all.
Yeah.
Not off the rails at all.
I was surprised.
Yeah, they were on task. And
actually, like I thought at the Druid's Grove, they would really kind of like get far afield of like what's going on. Like, let's go see this stump that the Druid has turned into. Yeah. Can we like use detect magic to like, I thought they would do a bunch, but like they got there and they're like, we need to, we need to restore Lowstorm. Yeah. And what do we need to do? It was pretty good. So.
And you predicted that, and I sort of likewise thought, okay, yeah, they're going to be able to get one. Maybe they'll hit another one before the session is over. They got through everything. Yeah. There was the one optional bit about the gnolls, Right. There was this talk of gnolls invading the area. And there were a few encounters with gnolls included. And I just let that kind of go, and it can be resolved if the party gets to it later. But for now, they've done the essential stuff. We can move on, right? Yeah. Let's see. It's never just regular gnolls, just 118.
Yeah, I had introduced that information several sessions back. Yeah. That I think in the lumber camp somewhere that the Druid's going to be in trouble because the gnoll pack lords are going to be coming after him. Yeah. And so I think I thought it was worthwhile to like use that as a major element that would kind of like play up, but have it be an optional thing, where he's still in control of his territory for now, but the gnolls have started making forays and scouting missions. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, what I was looking at, what I was considering using that as was a motivation to kind of push the characters through. Yeah. For everybody to make decisions, active decisions, and push them through the situation by showing them urgency, which I didn't need to do because they were on task throughout the entire time.
Right.
So let's see. What I thought was interesting, there's this whole other section of lore that Tom gave me in these notes that expanded more about the situation in the Ironwood overall. I thought that was really interesting, and I'd studied it. I was ready to divulge it in case the adventurers asked, in case the players asked about it. They didn't end up asking about it, so that's stuff that can be expanded on in another part of the adventure as well. But I thought that was. I was really kind of hoping that they would ask a few more questions because that was really interesting, sort of.
Some of that is on me in that, like I said, Jay's coming in to guest. I've tried to prep him as much as I can, but he doesn't know all the secrets, so take it easy on him a little bit. I said that in our private Slack. But also I think it's different, like having a guest player in. Yeah. You don't want to ask so many questions about the larger campaign because you're just kind of like shunting them out of the conversation.
Yeah. But there was this really great emergent moment when Roar asked Strum about flight, And that became this whole thing, and I thought that was awesome. I was like so glad to be there when that happened. I'm like, wow, that's a really great character building moment.
I love that moment where she gets petrified and Strum decides that she's dead.
Yeah,
she's dead.
Yep, she's dead. Yep,
it's the way she would have wanted to go, and then she falls face down in the mud.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
and it's the same thing. It's like that paid off too. It's like when they started, confronting Torin about Lowstorm. It's like, wasn't there the four of you? And then Thrum says, and Strum says, oh yeah, she died. And Torin just goes with it. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, And everybody else has to kind of like toss in, and that tells you a little bit about Strum. That tells you a little bit about that NPC.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. I thought that there were some really great interactions during that particular session. I had a lot of fun DMing that.
Yep. I thought it was very successful. I was very impressed that you kind of like landed on time.
Yeah,
it did start to get a little wobbly there towards that last 45 minutes.
Yeah, it did. But again, they stayed on task. And my big thing was, how was this going to wrap up? How far was I going to take it to the wrap up? Was I going to summon the owls? I know that I had to give them the information so that they could decide where to go next. Like, did they want to, did they want to encounter the Darrow first? Did they want to encounter Warwent first? So they had a choice to make as far as that goes. Was there anything else they wanted to do in the forest? They never asked to see Derwith.
Right. Yeah.
Who knows? That might yet come in. But
I hope not.
Well,
get them loaded on those giant eagles and
just
fly.
Push them in.
Let's move.
And so I wasn't sure exactly how far that should go, and I had it so that the owls were flying in and they were getting ready to go.
Yeah.
You can still just pull that trigger and kind of bring them in media res. They're in the owls, or you can let them linger on and ask a few more questions.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll have Amy back, and I'm sure she'll want to kind of be caught up to speed, at least on like what happened to Lowstorm.
Sure. Yeah.
So, what was there anything that was unhelpful or missing or just didn't quite work for you in this setup?
No, not at all. It was all just really useful stuff to have. The way I ended up setting it up, and the reason that I ended up having Torin out there in front of a cooking fire was you put in that bit about the stones.
Yeah.
The stones that because like a previous druid forbade fire in the ironwood, and so now all of the cooking is done with these magical heated stones.
Right.
So I added that in the because I thought that might be a catalyst for the players to ask questions. Okay, what's up with these what's up with these hot stones that you're cooking over?
Right.
And then that kind of leads into, well, there was this druid, and here's the story of the druid.
Right.
And the druid forbade this because all of the awakened people, all the awakened servitors, that could have potentially that could have been an opener for.
I think they might have missed the fact that it was actually stones that he was cooking over.
Yeah. I mean, man, it's one of those details that.
Yeah.
Again, conservation of detail. It's hard to pick out which ones.
It's hard to put focus on it, and then it's hard. If they don't pick up on it when you describe it.
Yeah.
Then when you try and bring their attention back around, it feels like you're really hitting them in the face with the clue back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they did pick up on the fancy pantaloons. They didn't pick up on the magic heating stones, but they picked up on the clothing. So I
loved the slow reveal of who Torin actually was. Because you described him from behind, and he's just this kind of like hulking figure, and it's only once he stands up and turns around that you figure out that he's this dire ape or whatever. Yeah. So that was a great moment, and I think the picture of him as this like intelligent kind of gruff ape. With all the trimmings of civilization.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's. I wish we could spend more time with him and with Derwith and whatnot, but I don't think we're going to be able to.
And of course, a lot of that was with your description of Torin, where spectacles, a wool vest, and canvas trousers.
Right.
So, that was a lot of fun. Just playing in on that, like, oh, he's got spectacles and all this, fancy jaunty clothing, and this is what I'm going to make him.
Somebody's got to be in charge.
Yeah,
Derwith's a stump.
Yeah, exactly. So when one of the moments that really caught me off guard was the whole, okay, you know, Torrin says, I've been watering Derwith. And they kind of took that in this direction that I did not anticipate at all.
You know.
So, you know, that was entertaining on my part. I had to sort of, like, not backpedal, but I had to cover my own rear. I had to figure out how to cover my own rear. The joy of DMing is being on your toes, being kept on your toes by the players.
So yeah, so the way that I laid this out was I gave Jay, you know, what are the hooks coming into this session? What are they trying to accomplish? What do they know about the Druid's Lair? That was a paragraph. And then just kind of beat by beat, here's things that they're going to learn that will lead them to this fetch quest, right? And here we break it down actually into scene by scene so that we have the intro scene, we have the arrival at Coombe Cernan at the Druid's Grove where they learn some more stuff. Then we have the fetch quest, gather the ingredients menu option, and then we have the end of the session, the denouement. And so that's the one page, and then I broke it out into more detail over the next 3 pages. So I was fairly happy with, and I talked about this last week, of going, okay, well, here's 5 encounters. Pick the 2 or 3 that you want to run that appeal to you. Go. So I like that approach, especially for something like this where I've got to hand it off. And then I did an appendix, which was, here's the map of the Druid's Grove. Here's what each of the buildings are, so that if you didn't decide to buy the adventure, you didn't have to.
Sure.
Some of the things changed too, right? Like I changed a few things, especially because when I decided that there's no, you know, this druid is still obeying the we don't use fire type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden the place where he brews all these potions and stuff like that, that's got to be different, and he can't have a hearth in his home without some sort of accommodation for it.
And I if I hadn't had Torrin out in the middle of everything cooking, we probably would have gone in and used this. So this was definitely useful to have the lay of the land.
I think it was smart though to like let's just let's meet the guy, let's keep things moving. Why have them walk up and knock on the door? They don't need to. He can just be there.
Yeah.
And then I put together. I'm pretty proud of these handouts. All kind of always end up looking the same, but my little parchment ingredient list, which I will post for our Patreon backers so that you can have this.
Yeah. There is one touch that I added to that particular thing, and that's the whole torn edges thing. There's like a really easy way that you can do that. And the nice thing about this list, part of the prep notes were
demonstrate for us.
Oh, sure, yeah. No,
it's a hands-on show. Let's see it.
And it is like super simple. You just need something that has a straight edge, like your handy-dandy PHB here. You just need to make sure that you have room between the critical information and the sides. Lay it down. You just start tearing. You can do this with like a plain white piece of paper too, and you just end up with this nice, simple rough edge that gives it ever so much of a
a little bit of just enough of a
enough character that you're not looking at a piece of paper that has these white margins on them. You kind of just go around and
it no longer looks like a computer printout.
Yeah, or at least it looks a little more like it belongs in the world.
But you haven't tried to feed some sort of like parchment paper through your printer.
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, it doesn't matter that this is in black and white. It looks just fine. You don't have to be perfect about it. You just do it quick. And in fact, if you have these rough edges, it just looks all the better. If you ask me. So
yeah, I agree.
It's the same sort of treatment that you actually see in the 5th edition materials. Because you look at the pictures in the player's handbook, and again, you see that same sort of rough paper edge on a lot of these images. Quick and easy way.
Dr. Faust Painting Clinic says iced tea stains work wonders as well.
Absolutely.
Make your paper feel aged.
Yeah, totally. Or if you don't have time to stain a piece of paper, just find, an old piece of an old like parchment background, toss it on and toss it in a Word, use your background feature to make it a background, and then type away.
That is a really easy way to give it just a little bit more of kind of like authenticity, or I don't know, authenticity in a fantasy world, whatever. Just make the prop like pop just a little bit more. Yeah, I really like that. That's awesome. Yeah. Other than that, I gave Jay some other background information about kind of like what territory, who's in control of what territory, and some other campaign related stuff. But that didn't come into play last session, and I don't think we were lacking, because of it. I thought it was a solid session all around, and really like it felt like the right length. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel like you're rushing to get to the end, or because you're overtime.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel like you're filling time or whatever. I know when I'm underprepared, when I don't feel like I have enough prepared, I get really anxious and kind of like start dog paddling. And it's pretty weird, right?
I know what you mean.
It's a tough feeling.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great.
One more thing that you sent out, which I'm glad you did, were Roar's stats and Roar's background.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and Christina was great because I said, hey, did you, here's sort of how you fit in. Would you be up for giving the information out? Would you be up for giving this background up? And she totally was.
Okay,
and that's great. That's awesome. She gave it a quick read as we were sitting here prepping for the session. And again, it was so efficiently put together. And again, it was also just the details of what she knows. And so it was a quick read for her, and she was able to give out that information. It made her feel like she was part of the world that was getting set up. That she was part of Derwith's,
It was 10 o'clock the night before, and I was like, well, all right, let's figure out what this saber-toothed tiger knows.
Yeah. And that was frankly just enough. So Torrin didn't have to do the info dump for everything. She was able to contribute. I think it made her, it definitely gave her a chance to be part of everything.
And it played a little bit, but I liked the fact that like she's the security patrol force for the Druid's Grove. Yeah. And then Torrin is sort of the guy the second in command or whatever. And so I put in there there's a little bit of friction. Like she wants to do stuff and he wants to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea that there's this Druid's Grove and he has all of these awakened animal companions around him, but they don't all 100% get along. They're there together, but they don't necessarily
they've got their differences.
Right?
Exactly.
I thought
that was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was it's always fun to take an NPC or a one-shot PC and put them in that relationship.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the goats. We didn't even get to the awakened goats. And I was like, what am I going to do with these awakened goats? All right. We'll.
Yeah. I thought they were sort of an element of whimsy that was on offer if it came up. But basically, there's these three goat sisters who are kind of like a little bit dumb and a little bit gossipy. And a real opportunity to kind of like have some role playing fun and go off in some different directions.
Sure.
So. All right. Anything else you want to say about?
No. So sort of just kind of tying in together again. Great notes. It wasn't overwhelming. It was just the right amount. And what your notes did was they didn't give me a script, but they gave me the tools that I needed to be able to make sure that the plot went where it needed to go, so that we didn't have another session of having to make up, more details before getting to it's time for this story to move on.
The danger of having a tool like Schrodinger's clues at your beck and call is that if you lean on it too much, you start to get too much stuff out there, and then your plot doesn't start funneling on a path. And I will say, with talking about plot radar, those elements that are far out eventually start to get so close that you have to start, the columns that are out there on the ends start emptying out, because as your season or as your adventure comes to a close, you should be tying more things off than you are introducing anything new.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
With the exception of okay, well, this is going to be a big plot twist. So, bam, that comes out of nowhere.
Right.
Or that comes out of an element that's been dormant, unforeseen, or they don't understand what it was and it gets recontextualized, etc.
Yeah.
But generally, so for my last 1 or 2 sessions, I won't even do plot radar. I'll go, what can I do in this session that takes these remaining elements, and I want to incorporate them into my location. I want to incorporate them into one of my villains. I want to incorporate them into something they find. Yeah. You should be asking those questions along the way anyhow, but it really becomes an exercise in kind of focused fire. What's left hanging, and how can I wrap it up in this encounter?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the whole thing with the ribbon didn't come into play this session. But
they didn't really get into trouble, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. And I hadn't really. I didn't want this to be another combat heavy session.
No.
So I made the combat fairly light on this one, but at the same time, it was really interesting, kind of playing on some characters' fears.
They saw those phase spiders, like, oh shit, I know.
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Does what?
Yeah.
I know what this is.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. Had some great moments with Kyle.
Yeah.
Last session when I had Torin do the whole raccoonware, and Kyle's response was just fantastic. Oh, so that's how it's going to be, or that's how it is. I was like,
in my back pocket, in my own particular headcanon, it's going to turn out that it's not actually a badger or a raccoon or a skunk. It's going to turn out to be the hide of a very hairy, very dirty, and grimy gnome.
Oh,
and he just didn't know under the giant bushy eye,
it was
the giant beard, and the
forest dwelling guy.
He murdered a fellow gnome, and
it's
now
like the
he's
Leatherman of gnomes.
Skin the whole time.
Wow. Let's put a spoiler tag on that just in case the cast visits this episode of DisOrganized.
Very good. So you're welcome to chime in on this next segment that we're going to talk about. I'm going to clear some room here. I don't know if Dom, you need to refocus the camera, but I mentioned it earlier. I got kind of carried away. They're going into the Darrow Lair next session, right? Tomorrow night they're going into the Darrow Lair, which is great. And so I was cleaning my apartment because we're having company tomorrow. And I don't know, how many boxes do you get from Amazon in a given week?
Oh, I've tried scaling down on that stuff. So.
I have too, but we still a suitcase was on sale. And the box that the suitcase came inside another box. And I was like, how much cardboard do I need? But I saw it, and I was like, I'm going to do one of those cardboard diorama battle kind of things. And so I got a wild hair and decided to put it together.
Oh, wow.
And
that's fantastic.
What's in front there? Is that this? Yeah, it is this. So this is the battle map diorama. So I took a piece of I don't know, this is about 28 inches and it's about 18 inches, something like that, of cardboard. And I basically took one box and then kind of cut it up. So there's a one layer that is the basic cutout, right? I didn't use an X-Acto knife. I just used a box cutter knife. It's not necessarily as terrible as you might expect in terms of handiwork, right? The tough part was to draw the initial map and to get the base layer down, because that's the biggest one. That's the part where I really did have to go all the way around the inside, right? But then once you're done with that and you've got that piece cut out, you can use that piece and trace it onto other pieces of cardboard,
right? And
then you don't really actually have to do a whole lot, because you just cut a little bit shallower, and then I would stack it on top and go, well, does it look like it kind of fits? No, I'm going to trim this out. And I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. Now I thought about Here's the thing. I will say, I've done this before with foam core, right? Mm-hmm. And this is all hot melt glued together. The cardboard does not have as tight of a finish on it.
You know, so
like foam core has it has like a laminated, like it's foam, but it has like a laminated, top sheet and a laminated bottom sheet, right? Yep. And my problem with foam core is if I do too much hot melt glue on it, the glue pulls on that top layer of material and the foam core warps, right? I didn't have any warping with this. That first layer is a real bear to get laid down. I should have cut it into pieces because I had it all one piece, and the air conditioning was going in the apartment because I was sweating like a monster. And so I started like putting hot melt glue on the back of this side, but then I had to go all the way around, and like by the time I got to here, this was already kind of setting up. Now, if I had just snipped it here and snipped it here, like I did on
or even smaller pieces layers. Than that too.
So. Then I do that piece and put it down, and then do another piece, and then. But the hot melt glue on cardboard doesn't do that warping.
It doesn't curl up.
It doesn't curl. Which is the good news.
It's probably because it can expand so much. It's not so densely packed. It's not so tight. There's like a lot of space in there for for it to.
Yeah, and I think I think the cardboard is soluble enough that it's like it soaks not just expands, but it soaks through the top membrane.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, I don't think this is done by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, it took me about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours to make this piece. I don't think I'm going to do the rest of the complex like this. That's too much work. But I had this material, and I wanted to put something on the map. Like, okay, this matters. Like, this is cool. It kind of runs a little bit counter to my design intent here because I want to try and get as much of this encounter finished in a single session as I can.
Oh, sure.
But this has really like become now a set piece, and I feel like it's gonna, even if I don't slow the players down, it's going to slow the players down just by virtue of the fact of like, ooh, okay, I go over here. And then, there's supposed to be a
counting
fight.
Squares stuff.
The Darrow start over here, and they start a fight here. So I think the party's gonna be there, and there's some other challenges on this side, right?
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see how I do. I feel like I've got some flexibility with the Darrow layer, and we've kind of been working towards it. That if it does go over the session, we can kind of wrap it up. But anyway, so this I'm happy with this in terms of the base of it. I will say I kind of wish I had used some gaming paper to put the grid down because I drew this by hand.
Yeah.
That was not fun.
Right. That was probably a lot more time consuming than you'd really wanted to.
It's just tedious. It didn't take a super long time to do. It's just tedious.
If not, well, I got to think about this. If not gaming paper, the 99-cent store or the 99-cent only store, or the Dollar Tree store, has gift wrap that often has grids in the back.
On the back, yeah. The trick about it for me with this thing was I didn't want to like staple the gaming paper to the base layer and then glue the stuff on top. But I definitely did not want to like try and like cut gaming paper to fit in this area, right? So maybe I could have like framed it somehow so that it would have been it doesn't really matter.
The other option is just not playing on a grid and using like a ruler to kind of measure out distances as you need to, which is
one of the things that I have done in that regard is I have in previous games where I've put terrain but I haven't had a grid, I will hand everybody a pipe cleaner.
Right.
And they will generally come in like you'll get a 12-inch pipe cleaner. And so then I draw a mark halfway.
Sure.
And that's 6 inches, that's 30 feet.
Yeah, that's 30 feet.
And then I will draw a mark 2 inches to the left of that. That's 20 feet.
Sure.
So if you need to do 50 feet, it's pretty easy to figure.
Yeah,
and
it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and it's lightweight, it's easy to handle, and you give one to everyone, and then they can get up and kind of like play around. Like, can I go that far?
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Throw your pipe cleaner on the table. Yep, there you go. Yes, that's a single move. That's a double move.
Right.
I'm sure Mike Shea, Sly Flourish on Twitter would tell you, like, just eyeball it.
Right, yeah. That's the other option. Yeah, that's the other option, too. But I don't know. I think this looks great. You mentioned the whole you mentioned not using an X-Acto. I think just because of the nature of the terrain.
I used a utility knife.
Yeah, those rough edges look just fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not...
I think if I had done foam core, I probably would have tried to use an X-Acto.
Sure, yeah.
But the other thing about this cave system is it doesn't have to be, spot on to anything. Right? Like this is not exactly the way that it is in the adventure, but it is very, very close. Right. And even if this is a little bit bigger or this gap is a little bit narrower than it was, who cares? Yeah. Like it's not like this. We get the idea. It's a rough-hewn cavern, right? And it.
There's a narrow possible bottleneck over there. Right. There are bigger open areas. A character can duck in and out here.
Well, and so now I just wanted to do a little bit more crafting today on stream. I'm not happy with the way that it looks right now. Like, I'm happy with the way that it looks, but I don't think this is the finished format, right? But we know that there's a river that runs kind of from this side. We know there's a pool of water that drains into here, and then it runs out this way, right? So why not use our marker to put that stuff on? I could draw it in pencil first, but I'm just going to freehand it and make it go. But I think this is going to actually add some pop to it, right? So we just make sure that we have kind of our wandering line here. And then this is going to come this way, right? And we know that this feeds into here, but this is also supposed to be, either from both of these directions, this is all supposed to feed into this thing. So I can either make this the base camp for where the Darrow are holed up, or I can make this one. I don't know. What do you think in terms of? I'm not going to make them both water.
Sure.
Right. So thinking about it from a DM's perspective, if it's here, if this is where the Darrow are, the advantage is that the party has to come into here if they want to get line of sight on them.
Yeah, exactly.
The disadvantage in terms of a combat is they can just go around the corner if they want to get out of the line. They can do that classic like pop out, pop back. If they stand here, they know they can do 1, 2, 10 feet of movement, and 10 feet of movement back, and they're probably safe. The advantage here is there's line of sight all the way out of the cave unless they go around the corner over there.
Sure. Personally, I would put them here so that there's an air of mystery as they approach.
Right.
Because the Darrow can move too.
Yeah.
And this is their space.
Yeah.
What you might want to consider is putting some sort of obstacle here, maybe an escarpment that they can slip down off, or like water that flows out so that it makes difficult terrain.
Yeah.
So that prevents them from really freely just running in and out of that spot.
Yeah.
And it forces them to decide, okay, do we want to push through? Do we want to push through knowing that we might have a tough time getting out? Or do we want to stay out there knowing that, if we stay out there, they'll just be able to come over here, pop in and out as they want to while they fire shots off.
I really like the idea that that this becomes like muddy on either side of the banks here, right? That coming up through here is muddy, right?
Sure.
That turns it into like difficult terrain.
Here's another idea too. The Darrow have, they've got traps there that let rocks fall.
Oh yeah,
sealing people in. If they step out, they have the potential of these rocks falling and separating them from the other party members. So they have to make the decision whether to go all in or, potentially have a tougher time getting into the fortress, itself.
Well, and one thing that that inspired me as I was putting this thing together is like this area up here, like there's a weird kind of like not quite finished quality to it, right? I was thinking you could put like a lone sentry up here who would still have line of sight out there, and then he could be the guy who like triggers this rock fall, or he's sitting there with his little repeating crossbow, etc. Right?
Oh yeah, they've got the Darrow have the self-loading hand crossbows, right?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and I mean, you can even add like
say that,
elements to let them hide and such back there. You know, the Darrow can
I wanted to create this topographical look. You know, that's been pointed out here. It wasn't. I don't want to like underestimate the amount of work that it was. It was about as much work as I expected it to be. I recognize that like it's a lot of work for one encounter to make this battle map type of thing, but you know, part of that is like I want to put on a good show for you guys. But in terms of the skills needed and the materials needed to do this, basically it was hot melt glue and a utility knife and a couple of boxes that I had laying around, right? And you know, maybe a ruler and a pencil and that kind of crap. But like it didn't require me, surprisingly, to go to the hobby shop.
Right.
It doesn't require any kind of special skills. Like, you know, for this kind of map, like the most rudimentary drawing that you can do is going to be fine. I don't have to worry about everything being square and fitting together and all that kind of stuff. So now I don't have to put like another rushing pool coming this way. I could just make this a thing, although I kind of like the idea that maybe there's, you know, in the adventure there's supposed to be another pool here. So I'm gonna kind of do that, right?
Oh.
Well, the other, you know what? What's it called? There is a great series of
is it
YouTube videos. Dungeon Crafter. I think is what it is.
I looked at one guy who was doing like tiles and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely looked at that.
Where was it? The DM's Craft is another one. That's a really good series to watch as far as getting ideas for how to craft terrain goes. What occurred to me is that because of the nature of this, you don't have to draw all the features.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you could have easily closed that off and have added this. As you know, maybe something that the Darrow do is that they pull a string, rocks collapse, water starts to fill one portion of the area.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is another thing that you could have. That's another way that you could manifest terrain here in this particular, section of the caves or of the Darrow outpost.
Yeah, I do want to like kind of just like what I like about this is, you know, it now it suggests the waterfall.
Yeah.
You know, here. I don't want this to be particularly big, but
first source. Okay, just 118 asks, what was the first source for terrain before DM's Craft? There was Lord, hold on, let me see if I can find it. On Facebook, there is a group called the Tabletop Crafters Guild. It is a closed group, so you will have to get invited to. I think you can like search for the group and ask to be invited, because it's got a pretty big membership. So it's not necessarily an exclusive group, but you know they make it so that. Other people aren't necessarily spammed by posts there, but that's one that's good to take a look at. And then DM's Craft is a good group to look at. Is a good YouTube series to look at though. Let's see. There are other groups that are around that are dedicated to crafting terrain.
There's stuff on YouTube, like like you can search a lot of YouTube and get this kind of stuff.
Absolutely,
that's definitely fair. I just want to like use this marker to add like a little bit more.
Yeah, give it a little more definition
and detail. I'm not entirely like happy with it, but that's But here's the thing, right? Is the marker doesn't have to do a lot of the work. I think that might be all of the marker that I probably put on this thing potentially. Because we're going to go back to the old standby of I have some beeswax crayons. You can use whatever kind of crayons you like. But these things, we'll do it over here. Yeah, we'll start over here. Like, they don't necessarily show a lot, right? But now all of a sudden, you've got some different hues going on here. And you can tell I'm not, very precisely working this. I'm just sort of following the shapes and outlines here. But now all of a sudden, the creek really starts to kind of come to life, and you feel that action and feel the way it's flowing.
Yeah.
Right? So, you don't go, I don't need a lot of coverage for that. That worked.
And I mean, drawing all that water and adding that texture to it took what? Not even 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That was probably pretty close to like 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes.
And then now if I want to add some mud, I don't know. Do I go with this dark brown or do I go with more of this reddish brown is the question, right? Yeah. Here's one. Here, are you ready? I don't know which color is going to be better.
Oh, there you go.
I got this. No, that's not bad. This is the darker one. Now that darker one kind of turns in kind of almost like a gray or black, right?
Yeah. But it might also read a little bit stronger.
Good news, my address isn't on here.
For the freeze frame, all right.
All right. So I think I'm going to go with this reddish thing, right?
Just give it a little more character.
To put some to indicate to the players like, oh, that's mud.
Sure,
right?
Sure, yeah.
So now I'm not going to go kind of like, but why not go up to this edge and I'm just sort of trying to rub texture in here, right? So that's all mud. And in fact, I might say, all right, well, this is pretty muddy, within a certain distance. These few squares that have some mud along them. But this then ends up pretty dry back here. Likewise, well, this might have a little pocket of mud in it. And this then gets very muddy down here, right? And that's that. And so when they say like, oh, what's this? Well, that's mud. Oh, okay. Oh, that's muddy there. Great.
Yep. You answer the question once. There's no asking, okay, is this part muddy? Is this part muddy? Is this part muddy? So on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, similarly, there's one other technique that I want to demonstrate here, right? All right. Did I miss something in the comments where they're like, what if the party doesn't go there?
Uh-huh.
You put the blanket over it and then you just stare at them until you go, do you proceed?
Right.
Do you proceed? Do you proceed? Okay, so it sounds like we're proceeding. Let's go directly to War.
Okay, all right. And that's when you flip it over and there's a mansion thing. No, I kid.
Now, Squeegee Man says, the water might be muddy too. You got a couple different options there. One is I could add mud to the into the water if I wanted to. The other is I can make it like a plot point, like, oh, you notice that the water is an unusually bright blue color, but the mud has this kind of like repugnant red texture, sheen to it. Secondly, you can also say, well, this is covered in a thin layer of water, but this is mud. I've certainly seen streams or creeks where it's a layer of mud, but the current is a little bit stronger and kind of carves this channel through the mud and is fairly clear in that spot, right? Like where the modern water be muddy is as they're coming up, you can see these big clouds and clods of red mud coming up there. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, I suppose what it comes down to is whether you want that to be a challenge for your players too.
Right, exactly.
Whether you want that to be a detail that stymies them. I mean, you could say, well, the water's muddy, you can't see at the bottom. That will make them think in a very particular way versus, it's water.
Right, yeah. And that's the funny thing, too. Sometimes you describe something because that sounds like a cool detail, and then they go, oh, well, we're not good.
Yeah, yep. Exactly. That's that's them making their own Schrodinger's clue.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Right.
That's them deciding for themselves that the cat is dead.
So now here's the part of it though that I want to really want to show off. Which is, I don't like how this is all kind of blends together, especially on camera, but even in real life, it's all just sort of the same color brown, right? So what I would like to do is I come around this side. Now all of a sudden you're seeing, oh, this is the outside of the hill. And I'm just kind of following kind of the edge of the line over here. This is where stuff grows, outside. Not a particularly refined technique, right? Honestly. Whatever. But now I can take my brown and go, this is the inside of the cave. Let's give that, some texture and show how that is the rock. And so how there's actually continuity here along the inside. And this doesn't have to be this. But what I like about it is that now it's also got even more of a feel like this is the inside of the cave. And it joins those disparate layers of cardboard into, gives the feel that it's even more of a surface.
And that just helps define the space more for the players. I mean, obviously, as a dungeon master, you know what's going on with the map, but the players looking at this for the first time can make a lot of judgments and a lot of decisions. It tells them a lot about the space that they're going to be going into. And, besides looking cool, that's what a piece of terrain like this is for, right? It's for communicating ideas and for doing a lot of the heavy lifting that you as a dungeon master might have to do otherwise.
Right. So, I think I think we're 90% of the way there. I might want to give this floor entrance a little bit of texture, and I have this kind of, I don't know. I'm not real happy with that. Here's the great thing about this particular color is that it's so light that I can just go in and add kind of some striations here and make it look like gravel floor. Likewise, so what I might do over here is just kind of give it its own little space that I decided to draw in a circle because it was more interesting. When in doubt, you can just follow your outlines. I mean, that's, we're done, right? I feel like we're pretty much done.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me.
I don't know what else to do. You might do, you might consider putting a highlight in here so that kind of definitively shows the break or something like that.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that it's clear that you can't go from here to here.
Right.
I think it's fine
you
the
can't
way
climb
that
up
is.
over that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it looks great.
I think, yeah.
And again, if the terrain changes, if a detail gets added, you can always draw that in as well. You can always or use you can use your campaign coins to toss something in
if a boulder falls or if, you know.
Where's the big bag? Dom, which one is the box of terrain? I just want those little styrofoam blocky things that we have.
Like these?
Yeah. There's some that are just rocks.
Some that are just rocks.
Yeah. It's in that box, so why don't you just hand me that box? Perfect. Where is it?
If you want to set that over here.
I don't know. So, I don't know. This is kind of big, right? But I could put a big rock here. I could, you know, these are terrain pieces that I could add.
But yeah, I was thinking put them up there to kind of...
Well, you know, so let me back up.
Make it even clearer.
I think a great idea is to put them out here.
Oh, there you go.
You know, give it a little more space beyond just the square thing. I think Montrevant sent us this terrain. Let me see if I can open this, because I think the pieces that I want are in this thing, in this loot crate. Yeah, these are the things I want, right? So I'm just looking for. I'm trying not to hit the microphone. You know, so something like that. I don't know that I have to use these, but I was just thinking, here's a great piece right here. You know, there's a raft or whatever.
Yeah, it can be like a palisade or something like that. So,
I don't know. We'll figure it out on the day, or I can just draw it in.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even without that piece, that's straight the way it is. So,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Something like this, where you can tell that this might open or close, or I can take a piece like this and go, "There's a rock fall chunk."
Yep.
That clogs up the passageway. So, all right. That's that was my project. That was my art project for today. I would like to apologize to my friends who are coming tomorrow that the bathroom isn't clean because I had to play Dungeons and Dragons. So, that's not true. I'll clean the bathroom. But there you go. It was, you know, like I said, 2.5, 3 hours of work to put this piece of it, to put the base layers together. A big part of that was like looking at the map and trying to figure out how it would fit on this particular piece of, like, how big is my cardboard? Oh, no. But I think it worked out. And then now decorating it, we did that in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think
it probably took longer to draw the grid than it did to decorate all that. So.
And I think it looks great and it conveys what's going on. And oh yeah, where's my Devereux compass?
Oh, there you go.
Oh yeah, so north is that way.
Yeah. or even put it in top of put it up there.
It's terrific up here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. Well, we're over time. So we're gonna wrap things up there. We'll be using this tomorrow night. The party willing. We'll be using this tomorrow night in the game.
And it's funny, you mentioned covering this with a cloth. This thing is easy enough to whip in and out if you wanted to. You could have it sitting, backside out behind you. And it's easy. It's not like those modular pieces of tiles that are huge, and you have to kind of relay everything out whenever you want to create something. You just plop that down easily,
and then
everything is there.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but there's no secrets on here where the player's going to be like, oh, well, if we can get over there, we'll be able to blah 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 blah, right? Like they'll know they got to get past this area, and then there's something else over here that leads up this way. Like, great, fine, done. I don't care if they see the whole thing at once. So yeah. I kind of want to have it covered under a piece of cloth before the game starts, just so they're like, how do we get to that thing?
Yeah,
what is
pique the interest?
What's that? What's under there?
Absolutely.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe you'll find out. Maybe you won't. That kind of thing.
Worm on a hook.
Yeah, maybe I'll put a bunch of foam. I'll tell you what. You just take your friendly neighborhood Tarrasque and you put that underneath there, and they'll be like, "What's the horn? What's this shape?" I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
there's plenty of fun ways you can, as we used to say, deke your players out. So, all right. So with that, I hope you'll tune in tomorrow night at 8 o'clock and join us for our D&D game, the Ironkeep Chronicles. That's coming up tomorrow night at 8. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we have Garden of Good and Evil with GM Stephen Pope. That's our Changeling game, so tune in for that. Tomorrow at 4, before the Dungeons & Dragons Madness start, the video game madness shall start with Megan and Jordan doing another installment of Couples Therapy. I believe we're still $9,900 away from having Peter Stormare come on the stream and make a custom video for this. We're just making up a number. We assume that 10 grand is enough to get Peter Stormare to come in and do some ridiculous garbage with us. So that's tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And then Friday at 8 o'clock, you can catch another episode of Wild Cards, our weird Deadlands Savage Worlds game. So tune in for that on Friday night. That's our lineup for the week. I want to give big thanks to Jay for, first of all, coming in last week, taking over the reins, doing a terrific job, keeping the party engaged and focused as much as that is possible with this party, and giving me a clean break to, I don't have to bat any cleanup to go from where Jay left off to where I can pick things up tomorrow night. So great job.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks for coming
always.
in.
Yeah,
very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone who subbed up or contributed some bits today or just spread the word on social media. Your support is the only way that we really make anything happen around here. So thank you so much to everyone who's a fan of the show. It's a new month, so if you didn't back our Patreon, there's still time. We'll take it, so that's cool. I'm going to put some of the handout goodies and my notes in for our Patreon backers. You can also get copies of our Plot Radar template, and as well as some of my other notes if you're a Patreon backer. So obviously check that out if you can. But if you can't, sub up or just serve in whatever capacity is appropriate for you and your situation. We just like having you here watching along. Big thanks to all of our mods who help keep the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible. We definitely appreciate all of your tireless work here and keeping our community fun. If you'd like to continue the discussion, or you have questions about what I've put together here, or any questions about your D&D game or what have you, you can join us over on Discord. We have Discord both for Disorganized Play, which is sort of a DMs only chat, as well as for the Ironkeep Chronicles and all the rest of our shows. Or if you just have a general question about saving throw. We're a month away from Gamehole Con. I will be DMing a special stream featuring Amy Vorpal, Dom Zook, Grav Galati, and the Double Clicks, along with Rich Molina. So you can join us. We'll be raising money for Extra Life, make donations, change the outcome of that game. If you're not going to Madison, I hope you tune in for that. That'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Already got some prep stuff in the work for that. And that's it. So until next time, let's dungeon! Perfect.
Okay.